Hi! In this episode I'll show you how you can create this awesome vector style for your own QGIS projects. Okay, let's get started here. I will be using a few vector layers. Some are more significant than others, but I will probably end up using all of them. You can use any layers, essentially, to suit your needs. I have a text point layer that I will use for some labels. The road layer will be a significant layer later on. A hydrography layer with the rivers will also be used. It's not really important, but it's nice. And the built-up areas layer will also be used. But the most significant will be the land use layer. And I will only use part of it. So I'll have to start with a query, because I'm only interested in the water areas, and those are in the category called, well, water in Swedish, vatten. But there are a few of them, and they are spelled with capital letters sometimes, so I need to use some clever selections. So double click category, and then I use like, and percent atten percent, because atten is the common denominator between all those attributes. So this should select only water areas for me. But when I click test, yep, it worked. Like that. So I'll just go to an area that I think will be suitable for my experimentations. So this layer will be my what should we call it? Distribution layer. So I will rename it distribution. Like that. And that will be used, this layer will be used a lot of times. So I'll also duplicate it. And I will call this my texture. I will have a lot of textured layers, so this one will be water beach. I will also copy it for rename, what do we call this? Water line. And I will place it above it. Just to make a quick styling for it. So the texture, it will be a line style, but I will change it later. But let's just add a line pattern with a blackish line like that. Maybe not that far apart, like that. And then we'll look at the water line. That will be an outline, simple line, like that. And then the distribution. That will be a shape burst fill. And let's increase this so we see everything. It will go from black to white. It will have a set distance. And for this map, I will not be using screen units. I will use map units for almost everything. And here you need to experiment a bit. What is a suitable screen map unit? Let's try 700. And a lot of blur strength. That is close to what I would like. How is 800? Yeah, I think 800 is fine. So, this distribution layer will help me decide on how far the lines will go, because I only want to have the lines close to the shore. So the distribution layer will be an effects layer. Not this kind of effect, it will be a layer blending mode. And I could use screen, for instance, or dodge. Not quite sure which one is nicer. I like dodge for this. Okay. So the map unit is 800, and I use dodge as a blending mode. For blending modes, it's important to know that you can't have anything underneath the blending layer without it being affected by the blending layer. So you need to plan for that when you create your effects or your styling. So I need another layer for my coloring. Call this water color. And it would be optimal to place the color beneath this line layer, but that won't work. So I need to place it above. And I will use a raster image fill and a watercolor. Let's see if it was that one. You can search internet for the textures you want to use. Just make sure that they are licensed in a way that you can use them. So this completely covers everything. So I'll need to use blending mode yet again, but this one I'll use multiply. Like that. Okay. If I zoom into the lines, they don't look particularly nice. They are very straight and mechanical, and I want something else. So let's fix the texture for the water lines. For that, I'm going to use GIMP and create my own texture. It will be an image 400 by 400 pixels, like that. And then I will use the brush, and I will use a custom brush or a brush head. I'm not sure what you call it. That gives me a bit more rugged look on the lines. In order to draw my lines straight, you can use a ruler or anything, but in GIMP you just click outside where you want to start your lines, maybe there. Then you hold down Shift and move your cursor, and if you hold down Control as well, it will lock to click Shift Control. Why doesn't it work? Shift Control Shift. Click Shift Control. It drops out. I don't know why. Maybe it's OBS, the screen recorder. It should work like that. Anyway, I have already created my my image, so I don't have to do it like this. But you don't need to be extremely accurate in this, because some inaccuracy in the distance between the lines and so on will just add to the hand-drawn effect. So I'll use my previously prepared image texture. So instead of a line pattern fill, I will use a raster image fill. And I have my lines here, like that. And I will change the map units. And they are a bit big, so let's say 1000. How does that look? Not very visible. Let's say 2000. That's more like it. And let's just look at the distribution with screen effect. Now, I still like dodge, but I think I'll increase it to 1000. Like that. By using map units instead of millimeters or pixels, it will be locked to the desired scale. So if I zoom in, it will be bigger. And I like that when I design a map, because I can design it for a scale that fits that scale. And if you change the scale, the symbology changes with it. Okay, let's go to the shoreline. That's also a very mechanical line. We'll need to change that as well. So the water line. The simple line is not very artistic in this sense. So I will change simple line to an arrow or a marker line. Oh, that's much better. The interval I will be also using in map units. I think I'll try 150 meters distance. The markers will only have a simple black point. The size of it will be in map units. And if I say 150 and we zoom in, you will see it like that. However, I don't want uniform sizes for this, so I will need to use data-defined overrides for it and randomize. Just type rand and then my lowest number, that's 150, and I'll go up to, let's try 300. See what it looks like that. And I also introduce some transparency to the symbols, so you will thereby get a few spots with higher intensity of the color. And you can also add some layer transparency if you want that, which I do. So maybe like that. In this scale, this looks pretty mechanical as well, very geometric with circles. But when I zoom out to my desired scale, the impression is completely different. It looks very, well, ink-like and hand-drawn. So this is the effect I'm after. Now I see an edge here. I need to change the watercolor raster image from original to a number that is larger than my screen resolution. So let's say 2000 pixels. Yep, that's fine. Okay, let's do land. And for that, I just copy or duplicate my water layer. And let's call that copy land color. And of course, I need another raster image. And I think we can use, this one. Okay, but it shouldn't be on the water. It should be on everything else. So we need to change it from single symbol to inverted polygon. Single symbol. There we go. There we have land. So I have my texture for the shore, the distribution of the shorelines, the land color, the water shore line, and now I can add the built-up areas. This will be similar to the water, but not as complex. I will have a simple fill with, let's use gray, without the pen, and I will add a marker line like before in map units, a bit thinner this time, so let's say 100 meters. But it should also be black, and the size should vary randomly from 120 to, let's say, 200. Try that. And not millimeters, map units. Okay. I think I can do a bit thinner. Let's say 80. And do 100 to 180. That's good enough for now. You can try out other intervals yourself. And let's try multiply for this. And some transparency. We are closing in on it. I will use a label for this. And that's a name. I'm not sure if I have a nice font for it though. Can I use that one? Yeah, sure, that's good enough. But this also should not be in points, it should be in map units. And I guess that's like 300. No, 3000. That's a bit much. 2000. That's okay. And some transparency. Not a lot, but some. I will use a buffer, but not a lot, and really transparent. I will use a drop shadow. I think that's enough for now. Okay, so there's the built up areas. Now let's do the hydrography layer, and that's essentially more of the same line style. So just a marker line in map units. 150 is fine. It should be in map units. Random from 170 to 280. And of course it shouldn't be red, it should be some form of blue. And it should be blended and a bit transparent. So maybe I pick a dark color from the, like that. Maybe a bit thick. That was nice. So let's keep that. And I'll place it underneath the shoreline layer. I'll probably place that one underneath the shoreline as well. Yep. Okay, roads. This is similar to the hydrography, the rivers, in that I will also be using marker lines. Map units, I need those to be a bit bigger. Let's say, well, I start with 150 as least size. And I want my core roads to be in the yellow scale. And the size should be random from 150 to, let's try 400. That's kind of okay. So let's zoom into an area so you can see what actually happens. Like that. Okay, that was the core line, but I need an outline as well. So I'll duplicate my marker line, and underneath it I will use the same interval, but I will change the color to something red, and the size should be at least 400. And maybe as big as 600. Let's try that. And now I also need to apply my let's see, symbol levels to the line. Okay, like that. That actually a bit big here, so let's make that marker a bit smaller. 350. And then I can make the red a bit smaller as well. $360. Oops. 60. And it doesn't have to be 600. 550. So when I zoom out to my desired scale, that is around there, it starts to look pretty nice. I think I'll introduce some transparency to the roads as well. I think that's quite nice. Okay. What do we have left? Texts. So this should be a no symbols layer. And I want to use rule-based labeling. And for this I usually create one template rule that I call other. And it should have the rule else, which will include everything that it doesn't have another rule. And I usually create this with a color that I don't intend to use otherwise. And let's create the labels. Let's select the same font as before. Not a perfect font, but it's good enough for this. Oops. Map units. A bit big. That could be an acceptable size to start with. And for this else rule, I will apply any styling that I will use for at least most of my other fonts. So for instance, a buffer, quite transparent. I will use a drop shadow, but not that blurry. Let's make it 1. Like that. I think, yeah. And now I can use the identify tool to, for instance, I want the lake names. So let's see if I can. There you go. It's a category that has something to do with vatten, water. So I'll create a rule. I will duplicate it, copy, and paste another rule, which I will call water. Oops. And it will not be else, it will be category like percent and the text for that should be black. No, it should be blue. Let's pick a color to start with. And then we make that a bit darker. Yeah, that's fine. And then I can just turn off every other label. But I also want to have the smaller cities. So I'll copy and paste the other rule. And change to category. I'm guessing this one. Yep. And they could be a bit smaller. Like that. And I'm pretty okay with that. That's actually quite nice. And as I mentioned before, I have designed the styling for a specific scale, but it will be appropriate in a few other scales that are close to it. Oh, I see a problem. My road. Let's make a query where category is not like ferries. Gone. So there we go. There you have a pretty interesting map styling that is quite easy to create in QGIS if you know what to do. And the key for me to creating this was when I realized I could use the marker lines. And randomize the size of the markers, which will be obvious when you zoom in that these are simple geometries, but in the intended scale it will give a very rugged effect. And then applying textures like this watercolor or any other texture and blending modes will create a very interesting map without having to create additional layers or using Illustrator or Photoshop or anything like that to finish off the map. One thing to consider is if you will print this map, you need to consider the resolution for the textures. So if we add a map here, it looks fine in the caching mode, but if I render it, let's see what happens. Yeah, it still looks fine. So, but at least you need to consider that you are using different resolutions. That's about it for this time. So please try it if you want, and if you create something really nice, let me know, because I'm also always interested in looking at nice maps. So see you next time.